I'm Jenni Russell. Welcome to Her Health and Happiness right here on UK Health Radio, your only real feel-good radio station. Also available on podcasts on all platforms, Google, Android, Apple, you name it. How you doing? And I also hope that, like me, you too remember that you are blessed and highly favoured, a magnet for miracles, the solution to somebody's problem, and the answer to someone's prayer. So Her Health and Happiness is a show dedicated to all aspects of female intimate health and the whole person. And this week we have two interviews. So the first one we start with is Charlotte Stirling-Reed. And we talked about 8 out of 10 parents finding it daunting cooking for their family and providing the required nutrients. And I found that quite an interesting conversation because, people think, oh, you just cook. But honestly, if you've got to plan different things for different people, it really is quite understandable. And then we've got Glee, and we are looking at teenage girls, trying to encourage them back into exercise. And that is both of these subjects, nutrition and movement, are subjects after my own heart. So, I do hope you find these really interesting. Before we get into that, though, I'm running this 3-day challenge. And one of the questions I asked yesterday was, and I posted it all over my social media, at Pelvic Secrets on Instagram and Twitter, and Jenni Russell on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I asked this question: how can someone who is not involved in the decisions you make be responsible for the outcome of your choices? And what do I mean by that? We make poor decisions when it comes to our health and vitality. And then somebody who's not involved in the decisions we make has to then try to fix us. That's i.e. the doctors and where we find ourselves. But also, I wanted to link it into a story I heard the other day. Now, this is really a story after my own heart. That's really kind of got to us and us in the black community. So we have these businesses and they do well. So black hair is one of the biggest businesses going. But most of the black hair shops are not owned by black people. They're mainly owned by Asians. And many Asians don't really have a liking for black people. They will follow the lot of women round. In America, they find this. PAX is the biggest shop. They have the shop that then they act like we're going to steal from them. So they don't know about black hair care, but they dominate. Anytime a black hair care shop opens up, they literally get strangled out. That's one thing. But when I found out about Grassfields, now Grassfields is owned by 2 black girls. They had £20 million in revenue, so $20 million in revenue, of making great African-inspired print clothing and selling it worldwide. So how an Asian man managed to take it from them and knock them out and make them only end up with 5% of their own business and take the name from them and take the rights and take the clientele, God only knows. But I'm bringing it up here today because I really, once I knew that, I'll never buy from Grassfields again. I will never buy from them. And there's only one thing on Grassfields I will keep. Everything else I got from Grassfields, I don't even want it. Because I don't want anything that associates with a business that would steal it from you. And I don't understand how you cannot do your own due diligence, ladies, and let someone take something right from underneath you. How can somebody come into our culture and tell us to trust them, but all the time they're taking things away? I understand you said your sister was sick, and by God's grace, I pray she's better now. But how could you, with £20 million revenue, you could have borrowed against the business. How did you borrow from somebody else? I don't get it. I really don't get it. So maybe I just need enlightening. And I know sometimes this is what happens. The devil comes in to steal, kill and destroy. This is why the word of God is so important. He comes in to steal what you've built up, your foundations, to steal the legacy you're supposed to leave for your children. He comes to kill your dreams, and he comes to destroy anything you've made so that there is no foundation to stand on. And this is where we find ourselves. And that's just one company. But this happens across the board for many, many people. And it says, guard your heart, because out of it flows the issues of life. And sometimes somebody can dangle a carrot. You had WhatsApp, you had all these different businesses where they just sold out because the money was so great. But what did they sell out to? What are we selling out to? And what are we giving away? And what Pandora's box are we actually opening is really the message there. So I pray for one of your sisters. I pray that you can start a different business under a different name. And you've had to learn a very, very harsh lesson. You let a $20 million business slip from underneath you and give it to another culture who wanted to use you as a front and because the name is so strong, wants to pretend it's a black-owned business. It's not a black-owned business. So we need to be aware of that, and I needed to make that point because it's really important. That's point number one. So the other thing I wanted to talk about very quickly is men's pelvic health. And again, talking about where we are. So I know there's a guy in Crouch End who offers people a great discount if they have the prostate examination against their MOT for their car. And it's a really, really good discount. I've been doing it for years. And I know that what happens many times is, and it's been mentioned before, is that celebrities will jump onto causes when the cause directly affects them. And that's fine, because at least it's being highlighted. But I think the only thing that then I struggle with is if you are into the cause and there are collaborations with people who have been doing this because it's in their heart to help people, why will you not collaborate with them? Because then it becomes about you, because now you're pushing something. And you're pushing an agenda, but you're speaking about it, but there are other people speaking about it too. So, and I'm calling out, and the person I'm calling out now is Colin McFarlane. I'm calling him out because I have had it in my book since 2013. I spoke with him on the radio and he was everywhere. And I've been doing my challenges. I've been talking with Men's Health. I've had great results on shrinking the prostate and having better prostate outcomes for men holistically. And that was a great opportunity. We connected. I sent messages. Once I've done the radio interview and he's been around doing all these radio and TV interviews, I've had absolutely no response to anything. And I find that a bit disappointing because I know that there are other people. My surrogate dad, Vasco Stevenson, sat on the Association of Prostate Awareness. I know there are people out there who genuinely do it not because they're struggling with prostate, but because they understand it and they understand pelvic and intimate health, and they're trying to help others to reverse the damage. So come on, Colin. Don't just make it about you. I've seen your posts on Instagram and you've got your t-shirts on and it's fantastic. But there are collaborations. Collaborate with those who are out there trying to make the difference in male intimate health. Not just so that they can have their name up in lights, but so that they can actually start to help others help themselves and help them transform their lives and not become a statistic. That's my second call out. I ain't calling out anything else. I'm going to come on to the tennis. Did you watch the tennis? Did you watch Djokovic and Alcaraz? I mean, that was just sensational is an understatement. And it's funny because by comparison, the female final was really flat. And that's not to knock on Jabeur or the unseeded lady that won. Can't say her name properly. I'm so sorry. From Czechoslovakia. She was great. She played well. I just wanted to clarify. I was saying to a few friends, she's made history and I love history makers. But what I was clarifying is she's not a complete unseeded player as in never played before. It's the injuries that lost her seeding. Because tennis players have to play all the time on the circuit to keep their ranking. And she had so many injuries that she was unranked. But she's come back and, she played a different game. She wasn't this big, massive, hard hitter. But she knows the game. And it's amazing. And it's really fantastic. But I think the most important one is that, there are a lot of times in history, a lot of people are overlooked. And when it comes to Wimbledon, there are a lot of people that are overlooked. And I think the one person that was really important and definitely needs mentioning is Althea Gibson. Now, Althea Gibson was the first black tennis champion. She was born in 1927. She was the first black tenniswoman to win Wimbledon. They created this American Association of Tennis Players because back then when she played, blacks weren't allowed to play with whites for tennis. They weren't allowed to play. And when she was able to get into a US championship and into Wimbledon, she wasn't allowed to enter the same door and gate as her white counterparts. She had to go in the back. She wasn't allowed to dine with them. She wasn't allowed to eat with them. And this is the level of racism that we have gone through over time. And to this beautiful, beautiful sport called tennis, it was there. It was there, and there was that whole thing. But she won this championship 10 years on the trot. No one's done it since. She won the US Open and she won Wimbledon way back in the 60s. I've never heard of her. So my question is to Wimbledon and the LTA, why is it that somebody so iconic, somebody who was a trailblazer, someone who set such great history, is never mentioned? Why do you not mention her? She was the first black player to win Wimbledon and won a US title. She was a trailblazer. She played mixed doubles. She played. You let her in through the back door and out through the back door, and she couldn't mix with her white counterparts. But why is she never mentioned? Why are some parts of our history just taken from us and just not talked about? This is where it becomes, this. Probably today, my listeners, please do not be offended. You're thinking she's really on a black rant today. But it's important. It's really important. Look up Althea Gibson and see what she did. And when she retired from tennis, she went on to then do sort of tennis presentations and fun for in front of the Harlem Globetrotters and in front of the basketball. And then she also went on to become a professional golfer and did really well as a professional golfer. She went from tennis to golf. She transitioned across the two sports. But I'd never heard of her. No, maybe that's my own fault in the history. But a lot of it, they say they hide it in books. I just never heard of her. But I just wanted to make sure that we know that she's there and that she is celebrated for what she did. Because I think, that's the thing about the tenacity. That's the thing about our culture, is that we have to continue to be tenacious. We have to continue to drive. It's like we have to put ourselves on you and keep putting ourselves on you. And we shouldn't have to do that, because when you say that you don't see colour, it's like, or say we should, and the Bible does say forget the former things. But it's very hard when it's not so obvious now, the racism. It's much more subtle and subdued, but it still exists. And I have to ask myself, what is it about our colour that scares people so much? And why is it that we shouldn't be celebrated? And why is it that we should just, the things that were stolen from the African nations and that are displayed all around the world, why won't they be given back? A lot of the skulls and the heads that are everywhere around, they were the ones that were murdered. And then they're on display in museums. We've got to look at, the treasures that we took. And we've got to look at the legacy that was left behind and wonder why, just because I'm a person of colour, I should be seen as a person that's not as fearfully and wonderfully made as someone whose skin is seen to be purer. Why is your skin purer? It's a different question, but it's one that I think needs answering. And I think it's one that we could have a great conversation about, because trust me, if we sit and think about it and we sit and worry about it, we'll turn ourselves crazy. So we can't. We have to remember that was what was in the past, but things can be different in our future. But it's a collective effort for all of us, because we don't pose a threat. We don't pose a threat. We're walking alongside you. You're walking alongside us, and our blood is red. Our heart beats the same way. We do the same things. We have the same dreams and aspirations. So we just want to not have to fight all the time, I suppose, is really what we just want to do, because we don't pose a threat. We're a blessing. We're a blessing. The African nations are the most resourceful and sourceful places. But don't rob it from us. Just share it with us is a better way to put it. Don't come and try and take it by force and then ask us to be grateful. Just share. Share. That's all you need to do. Just share and love, because love is the principal thing. And let that love flow. And if you love and you really do love, then love doesn't beat others. It doesn't hold on to malice and anger, and it's not envious and adulterous and lustful and greedy. Love is patient, love is kind, it's gentle, So we need to get back to that point there, and then we'll have a much, much better world. Because right now, the world we have is very, very greedy. Certain people are very, very greedy, and they're happy to close their eyes to what they see around them, as long as they can show off what they've got. And we've got to move away from that, because that's a very dangerous place for us to be, and it's a dangerous place for our children and our children's children to get into. So that's enough of my ranting for today. Let's get into the show. Let's get into the show.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Okay, are you one of the 8 out of 10 parents who find it daunting cooking for your family and providing the required nutrients? That's the conversation I'm going to have today with the wonderful Charlotte Stirling-Reed, and we are going to talk about the daily challenge of how to feed the whole family delicious and healthy meals. So, Charlotte, welcome to Her Health and Happiness.
Oh, hello there. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So, for me, I love food, right? Food is, and I've gone from talking about food to talking about nutrition, because that's how we feed the body at the cellular level. So what has this study found, according to this recent survey? What has it found, and how are you going to encourage my listeners?
Well, I think it's just this idea that it's super overwhelming to be trying to feed your family a healthy, balanced diet with all of the other things that as parents and carers we have to think about day to day. It's just there's a super overwhelming amount. And I think when I was a mother to two, and all of a sudden I had 2 kids to feed, I remember standing in my kitchen just thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to prepare enough food and look after a toddler and a baby? And I just was really overwhelmed with it. So I can totally understand how the parents in that survey are saying the same thing, really. I think there's also a lot of very confusing messages, and people are also struggling financially at the moment. So there's a whole plethora of reasons why it is incredibly challenging to feed your family a healthy, balanced diet and to all eat together. But actually, that's exactly why I've tried to write my book, to try and help that become just more normal and easier and more enjoyable for everybody, really.
Fantastic. So 2 questions, right? What's the difference in ages between your 2 children? Congratulations, by the way. Number 1. And number 2, what's the title of your book?
So the title of, number 1, my ages between my children are just about 3 years in age. So it is actually quite a big difference. And I've got lots of friends at the moment who are having babies much closer together than that. So, there's obviously, easier things and more complicated things depending on those age gaps. But I think for whatever age gap that you've got, the book, which is called How to Feed Your Family, the aim of it is really to try and make that a little bit easier. So I've got information in there on things like menu planning, but also reducing food waste, how to prep and store your foods to make the most of it, what nutrition children need at different ages, and for you as an adult, how to also look after yourself, because that's important too. So all of that in the book, plus lots of healthy and well-balanced recipes too. Fantastic.
Because I'm a foodie. I love doing food. I'm a nutritional lifestyle coach myself as well. But I shop all over the place. So I tell my friends, I don't just go to a supermarket and buy. And I know that if you've got more than one child, and my children are older now, I've got 29-year-old and 17-year-old. But when you've got your children and you've got them in different ages, and you've got to take this one to nursery and take this one to school and prepare this one's field trip and all these kind of different bits and pieces, it's not that easy to say, pick that up from the farmer's market, pick that up from, wherever. So how do you encourage these parents? Because I think that's the challenge, because, and again, with this cost of living that we talk about, there is a lot of food waste, because a lot of foods and food bits are sold in packets. So unless you use the whole packet, the potential for waste is quite strong. And I think I did a show on TV years ago with Allegra McEvedy and Paul Merritt, and it was Economy Gastronomy. And they were looking at how you can take something and then turn it into another meal the next day and turn it into another meal the third day. Yeah. So, and that's what I think we have to kind of also get back to. Now, obviously, fish is great, but that doesn't become 2 days meals. So, when you do something like either a vegan version or something, or a meat, the beauty is you have an opportunity to eat it as it is one day, then turn it into something else the next day. So how are you encouraging parents in that regard?
I love that as well. And I think one of the biggest things that I talk about in the book and that I found even for myself as a parent is that I was just not using my freezer efficiently. And in all honesty, that's one of the biggest things I found. So, what I try and encourage parents to do is when you get back from the supermarket, just give yourself a little bit of time or from the shops, just give yourself a little bit of time to do that prep. Get yourself organized, get the foods, stored in the right way. There's lots of tips and tricks you can do with food to make them actually last a lot longer. And if you do put that little bit of time in, it can make such a difference to your food budget, to the amount of food you're wasting, and to the ability for you to have more food throughout the week to tap into, exactly like you're saying. So,
and more time as well.
Exactly, and more time during the rest of the week completely. So I have definitely been doing a lot more shopping, a lot more kind of cooking some meals in bulk, getting them in the freezer. So especially like you said, if you brought something home and you're only using part of it, use the rest of it in something else. I've got like a chicken soup recipe in the book for those who eat chicken and who are happy with those kind of recipes. And it takes a little bit longer to prep, but actually it makes a really big amount and you can easily freeze that and boom, you get it out the freezer, the night after you've had a really busy day and there's your meal for the next day and you don't have to cook. So I've been doing a lot of that. And I feel like in the UK, we don't really use our freezer well enough. It's more just kind of things chucked in there. We never really know what it is. When you get something out, you're like, oh, I didn't even know this is in it. I don't even know what this is. So for me, it's a lot more like focusing on utilizing your freezer much more efficiently and labeling some of the foods that are in there so you do know what that little lump is at the bottom of it.
Guilty. That's why I'm laughing.
Exactly.
Oh my God. I never used to use my freezer at all. I was just like, I don't, I rarely used it. And now I use it more. And I went through a phase last year, exactly what you just said there, Charlotte, where I actually realized, because that's the thing, you put things in the freezer and then something else goes and something gets pushed to the back. And in fact, guilty. I used to do this come down with my clients. We stopped last summer and we did it for like all through lockdown. And we made this wonderful loaf, this bread, this gluten-free bread. It was amazing. And I found the rest of it in the freezer the other day. My son said, what's that? So that's the loaf we made probably at the beginning of last year. And it's like, oh my God. But I did go through a phase where I said, right, we need to start writing out like what's on shelf 1, what's on shelf 2, what's on shelf 3. And I think that's the thing is, like you said, it's utilizing the freezer more, but remembering that if you're going to put something new in the freezer, pull forward the stuff that's in there before and put it towards the back. But just put a little post-it note on the fridge that tells you that shelf 1 has this, shelf 2 has this, shelf 3 has that. I was going to ask you another question that's got out of my head. It'll come back to me in a second.
And I also have in the book this food to use chart, which I've been using on my fridge and freezer.
Excellent.
And the idea of it is basically like if you know something needs using up and it needs using up by tomorrow, you write it down, you write when to use it by, and you give an idea of what to use it in. So, for example, these raspberries, they need using up by tomorrow. I'm going to make them into porridge. And I find that really helpful because then when you look at the fridge, you've got all of these things that need to be used up right there, right then. And so, it's kind of like tips and tricks like that I've really tried to enter into the book.
That's fantastic. I think what you're basically saying as well here, and because I can hear some parents saying, I haven't got time. But this is the thing, right? If we're looking at how we can save better in our pockets, looking at how we can, stop wasting food, looking at how we can give our children and ourselves the best nutrition at the stages, as you said, because everyone needs a different nutrition for different things, then we have to be willing to say, right, I'm going to start a bit of prepping, a bit of planning. Because that's, if you've got a meeting, if you're a person working, you've got a meeting, you've got a plan. If you're a parent, which is a major, amazing job, and you've got 4 children, one child's got this field trip, one child's got this singing lesson, one child's got this football practice, you still have to plan. So planning the food, actually, because all of those children need that nutrition. So all you're doing is planning the fuel. It's like the car. You can't go on a long journey when the car is empty. So all you're doing for your children, aren't you really, is just planning the fuel that they need. And if you plan it the way in which you're suggesting it and having those little food tricks, then it just means when you wake up in the morning, you're not like...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things I really learned with doing the book is that giving yourself that 1 or 2 hours to do the prepping. And I do that at the weekend. I give myself 1 to 2 hours to get myself organized. It saves you so much time, so much headspace, so much anxiety during the week. If you're a parent, you open the fridge and goes, I do not know what to feed. I don't know what to do. Help me. This really is why I did it like this. And I think sometimes as well, it's fine to give yourself that, those fridge raid meals, or have an emergency meal that you're going to tap into, which I do so much at home. But if you've got 2 or 3 meals for the week, absolutely sorted, because
tell me an emergency meal.
It will just save you so much time, headspace, and anxiety. And it really has done for me. So I hope it will help other people too.
We've got 3 minutes, 2 minutes left. So give me an emergency meal. Just give me an example of an emergency meal.
Oh, perfect. So our porridge is one in our house, beans on toast, egg on toast, breakfast cereal, quick sandwich, quick wrap. Those are all things that I'd go, oh my goodness, I've got nothing left. Here you go. Or even some crackers with some cheese and a piece of fruit and maybe a little bit of Marmite to dip in. Done.
There we go. So that's loads of session. Do you know, like my parents are from the West Indies, right? So growing up, they had avocados, trees in the back garden, all those things. But the children that could go to school and make a ham sandwich, they were jealous of those, not realizing that when you took to school this massive, massive avocado looking like a rock, you were giving yourself the best nutrition. And now it's a meal that everyone's chasing after. It's like a middle class treat. But that's one of the things for me. If you love avocado, if it's a man, I'd marry it, right? You have that there in the fridge, and you come home and you're like, toast a bagel. Yeah. Put in some butter, put some avocado in it, salt and black pepper, and then you've got some nutrition, and it's always there. Charlotte, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
I was going to say
and it's funny. My mum has dementia. She's bedbound, and I rotate with my sisters, and we look after her. And I bring everything to her. I'm all organic. I do all that stuff. So exactly what you said. I go and I order the meat and whatever I've got. I plan the meals that I'm going to take to her. And so I come home, I season all the meat and the fish and whatever, and then I have to separate, leave some for the boys, take some to my mum's. But I also use ramekins. I find that one of the tips I think is good for parents is that at home we have these big plates and we pile the food. And we sometimes when we overeat. We go to a restaurant and they give us smaller portions. Sometimes I use ramekins and put them into ramekins so that you've got the nutrient dense, but you just don't have such a massive amount. Yeah. So, if we learn to, and if we drink water, because a lot of times we're more thirsty than we are hungry, then actually we'll get through this season and it won't be so bad.
Yeah, completely. Oh, well, thank you for having me on. I am running a free webinar tonight with Stocker, who do the Trip Trap chair. I'm running that tonight at 8:00. You can, if you go to my website, www.srnutrition.co.uk, you can find out all about that. But it's tonight at 8:00. And like I say, free webinar, tips, tricks, hacks, and I'm going to be doing a Q&A.
Excellent. And can we find you on social media?
Yes, I'm at SR_nutrition, and there's so much advice and information on there. So I hope that's going to be helpful.
Fantastic, Charlotte. Have a magnificent Monday. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. The station that makes you feel good.
Are you a parent of a teenage daughter? And do you find that your daughter, or do you worry that your daughter does not move enough? That's a conversation I'm going to have with the lovely Chloe Madeley, and as she supports a new campaign to get young girls moving this summer. So, Chloe, welcome to Her Health and Happiness.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Do you know, listen, fitness, I'm all things fitness and exercise and movement. So it is a story after my own heart. It does worry me that girls feel that they don't move. So what has this survey found?
So Nuffield Health commissioned a survey, and it concluded that more than 2/3 of young girls, and that's specifically 11 to 16-year-olds, found that their interest in and passion for sport and exercise completely diminished after they started their menstrual cycle. It showed that over 1/3 of young girls feel that they don't want to take part in any sport or exercise around their menstrual cycle for fear of embarrassment. It showed that 1 in 5 young girls feel that PE at schools doesn't cater to their interests or things that they're interested in doing when it comes to sport and exercise. That's something I can really relate to. I was offered rounders, hockey, and netball, and that was it. And none of those interested me at all. And it wasn't until I was so much older that I found training, and specifically weightlifting, but everyone finds a different thing they enjoy. It doesn't have to be that. And my mental health became so vastly improved so quickly, as well as my physical health. And I wished that I'd found that so much sooner than I did, because my teens and early 20s, when I was really struggling with generalized anxiety disorder, would have been a lot more manageable. So yeah, I'm working with them to try and really promote the campaign. It's more of an initiative, really, and get the word out there.
Fantastic. Do you mind me asking how old you are?
I am now 30. I just turned 36 a couple of days ago.
Oh, you're a baby. I say this all the time, I could be your mother. Sure.
We don't look like it. So
well, I could, mate. Let me tell you, you're 36. I'm literally double your age, almost literally double your age, minus a few years, minus 6 years, yeah?
Congratulations, you.
So, and this is the thing, I think, when it comes to PE in schools, the school curriculum needs a massive shake-up, but when it comes to girls in schools, when it comes to girls in sports, it's like tennis. They've just, this year in Wimbledon, they finally allowed women to wear different color shorts underneath the tennis skirts, because obviously, you've got women with menses and they're doing 2 weeks of tennis, and that intensity as well, and the adrenaline, that's an embarrassing statement in itself. And the sports that are being offered at school at the moment don't really get you going. This, with all the freestyle dance and all the things that can go on, you can get girls moving by just taking something, adding music to it, and just putting some movements together. And now they're using their whole body, they're using their coordination, they're crossing the left and right hemisphere of the brain, they're stimulated. Bless you. And they're willing to do that, and they can wear like loose clothing, they can wear dark clothing, and they don't have to have that fear around their menses. Would you agree?
No, I completely agree. I think the good thing about the classes that are being put on is that they're completely free. Nobody has to pick them. They're all over the UK and local communities, sometimes indoor, sometimes outdoor, and they cross over so many different things, everything from boxing to dance to yoga to Pilates. And I honestly think that just opening girls up to different types of exercise, I always say it's like eggs. Everyone has eggs that they don't like and eggs that they do like. Open them up to the options, they're much more likely to find something they like. And as you say, physically fit and physically active is important. But I do agree with you. I think it's important that we normalize conversations around the menstrual cycle and periods. I think, this is something which a lot of young girls and women, grown women have to deal with. And it can be problematic on a practical level, and especially on a sporting level. And doing things like, what's happened at Wimbledon, and the Lionesses changing their shorts from white to blue. To say, allowing women maybe a freedom of choice when it comes to, and it sounds so silly, it sounds so surface, but just even being able to choose their kind of sporting apparel, it gives them feel a lot more security, and they feel a lot more safe taking part. So it is definitely something that needs to be kind of talked about and figured out, as well as more options being presented.
For sure. And like you said, it's Nuffield Health that are doing this, and they're putting on free classes. And the campaign's called Move Together, is that right?
Yeah, it's Move Together. If you just go on nuffieldhealth.com/move together, you can sign up. It's going to be free. It's going to be every week. It's going to be a safe space for young girls to go and do things together. And I also think outside of a school environment, that can be really helpful as well, just for socialization. So it's a really great initiative.
It's fantastic. And I mean, the thing is, for me, I specialize in pelvic health, and I've got this whole thing where I'm going into corporate pediatricians, they're saying to them, the menopause is the last big event to affect a female, and the last big effect to affect her pelvic floor. But a lot of the symptoms that you get in menopause actually happen in menstruation. They happen in maternity. We need to have the conversation, as you said earlier on, from the school. We need to understand that when a woman is in her menses, her inner unit is not so strong. So we have to change the exercises that she does when she's going for a period. Now, that's going to be hard because different girls, they'll be going through their periods literally every day of the month. But you've got to be able to give them options and classes. So you may have your netball and rounders and hockey, but then also you need to have things that allow them to be able to do more flexibility movements, more stabilizing movements, because they're not as stable anyway in the first place. So you need to be able to have those different things there. You need to have that conversation so that it's not something that little boys take the mickey out of, and it's not something that girls should be embarrassed by, because obviously exactly the beginning of menstruation is the beginning of ovulation. It's that time when that that girl is being prepared for fertility at the right time to move into motherhood. So it's just a biological thing that happens to every female. So we need to have a conversation around it that, you know, I write spoken word on all this stuff. So, and Jenni Seagrove, the actress, when she wrote the foreword for my second book, she said that I sandwich together humor and science in the most unusual fashion. And hey, presto, nothing seems embarrassing and everything's important. That's where we need to get to. Take away the embarrassment, but bring up the importance and let girls know, you know, you're not dying. It's not the end of the world. You're not alone because it's a female thing.
Yes.
But actually you can still move and you can still move well. And you're allowed to, you know, sort of alter, as you said, the Lions are wearing navy blue shorts. Wimbledon, lots of the girls now had on, still girls had white, but a lot of girls had on black and they had navy blue. So let's get to a point where you're not sort of worried about exposing yourself, because that's the biggest thing, the exposure and then what follows that. So you're not being exposed, but also that the body was designed to move.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. There is a much more kind of, I suppose, specified conversation you can have about training and periodization, ironically, when you are on your period. So, you know, research has shown time and time again that physically women are stronger in their actual menstruation phase, weaker in their luteal phase. And that's a really interesting thing that I know a lot of people in my industry, because I predominantly work as a weightlifting coach. A lot of women in my industry kind of taper their workouts around that. There's a much bigger conversation to be had about pelvic floor health, as I'm sure you know. I mean, across the board, it's so important. You know, I'm now pre and postnatal qualified, so it's something that I talk to a lot of my clients about. The amount of women who go to the doctor after 6 weeks and are given the all clear to go back, and then they go in and they start squatting really heavy again, not having done any work on their pelvic floor, or not in pregnancy, let alone postnatally. It's a really big conversation to have, and you're right. I think there is stigma. You know, it's so funny, women are expected to procreate, you know, get married and procreate, and yet, as you say, everything that goes into that, and such a huge part of that, kind of gets brushed under the rug as a taboo. And it's really unhelpful for young girls, their understanding of their body, what they can do, and also young men, and what is, you know, has been certainly in the past, like quite a disrespectful attitude to women, especially when they are menstruating. You know, we've all heard those nasty little comments of, oh, you must be on your period, and it's like, I'm sorry. Sorry, what?
Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy, isn't it? And so that's what I'm saying, we've got to remove that rubbish and start to actually have a better conversation, because also men, I always say that whatever affects us affects our brothers or our male colleagues, especially when we move into relationships and into work and into marriage. It affects us. So they need to understand, because, you know, the percentages of absenteeism because of menstruation related issues for companies is huge. So really? It's costing them their bottom line massive. That's the way you get to talk to companies, when you tell them about the bottom line. But that is what's happening. Girls that are having different issues with endometriosis and all different types of things that can affect them in menstruation means they're not going to work, means they're not as productive, means they're worried about their job, which makes their menses worse, means the company's worried about their performance and their bottom line. So there's a huge conversation. And if you're the wife of one of those men in work, and your wife decides she doesn't want to work anymore because of the stigma attached to it and the comments that are made, now there's a pressure on you as a husband to double up on that wage to bring it into the household. So how men think it's nothing to do with them, I don't understand.
I know, it's so funny how much it comes full circle every time. And you're completely right. I heard a statistic the other day about 80,000 women leave their jobs when they're going through the menopause because their brain fog is so bad. They're so embarrassed, and they, you know, the hot flushes are so bad. They're so embarrassed. And I just keep hearing this narrative over and over and over again that women are so embarrassed. Young girls are too embarrassed to join in with sport and exercise when they start menstruating. And I think, why do we feel ashamed of our bodies and actually what is happening naturally? What is the inevitable? We should feel as women supported, able to talk about it, able to say, hey, I'm having a bad day. Like, I need some more assistance. I need some more help today. And supported by each other and men. And I definitely think that the conversations are changing. Obviously, everything's changing now. Finally, the landscape is getting a lot better, but there's definitely a ways to go.
And I mean, you know, we're equal, we're not the same. And that's what we need to understand. Biomechanically, we're different, but we are equal, but we're not the same. And once we embrace that difference, even as females, and also for us females that don't struggle, to actually be the cheerleaders for those that do struggle, because sometimes that's the other barrier that we have to get over. It's like, well, I haven't got a problem. What's your problem? You know, we need to get over that one as well, so that we can have a better conversation. I know we're running out of time. So Chloe, where can people go to get more information?
If you go on nuffieldhealth.com/move together, you can sign your daughters, plural, up, and their friends. And it's, like I say, they're going to be run by professional fitness instructors. So they're going to be in safe hands. They're going to be safe environments, safe spaces for young girls to go, move together. And like I say, I really like the kind of the social outside of school element of it as well. So yeah, head on over and sign up.
Fantastic, because it is quite a daunting thing to walk into a gym as a young girl. So yeah, that was a great way to get them together and let them know that it can be a safe space. So where can we find you on social media?
Oh, I'm at Madeley Chloe on Instagram, and I deleted my Twitter because I feel like Twitter's a cesspit of humanity.
Well, I've still got it, but I was like, do I look at it? Yeah.
I just deleted it. I was like, I'm done with this.
So at Madeley _
At Madeley Chloe. No, just
Madeley
at Chloe. And yeah, you feel free to drop me a DM or a line if you have any health and fitness questions. I am fully qualified and very happy to help.
Excellent. Chloe, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Take care. Well, I really do hope that you found both of those interviews really, really inspiring and useful. I mean, like I said, I think Nuffield Health, that's a great initiative. Now, see, David Lloyd, you could take on a bit of that and do it for yourself. That's a fantastic initiative, and we need to have this conversation more. Like I said, this show is about female intimate health and the whole person. And that female intimate health starts from our menses, and we need to get to that point where we're not making our daughters feel embarrassed, where we're not putting them on display. And even as girlfriends, we are each other's cheerleader. We are our cheerleaders for each other. Just because we're not struggling with an issue around menses or maternity or menopause doesn't mean that issue doesn't exist for that woman, and we should support her through that issue that she has. And as I mentioned to Chloe there, we need to, guys, we need to stop saying, oh, you're having your period or you're doing whatever, because emotionally, hormonally, we go through this roller coaster. We are equal, but we are not the same. And it's time for us as females to recognize that. So stop trying to over-masculate ourselves and recognize that there are beautiful wonders and blessings in being female, being feminine, right? We're just designed differently, and that's the beauty of it. So we can come together, and that's how we make life and make life carry on. So we've just got to recognize those different changes. But also, for us as females to know that a lot of our menstrual issues are directly linked to our nutritional intake. So this is why this is a great show this week, because we're looking at parents looking at what foods to give their children, but also that still becomes that for girls in going through menstrual issues, especially if they're struggling with something like endometriosis or polycystic ovaries. We need to look at actually looking at certain grains that can exacerbate that. We need to look at certain minerals that we need to have in the body. So for instance, magnesium is a muscle relaxer. So girls that are struggling with muscle cramps and cramping during their menstruation may need to increase their magnesium intake. They may need to increase their vitamin D intake. We've got to look at that. We don't just look at because they're bleeding, it's just iron. We have to look at the other things and what it does. Calcium is our muscle contractor. Magnesium is our muscle relaxer. We need them both in equal measure because they both counteract each other. We need potassium because it's for our sensory communication. We need that. But also, magnesium has been known to relieve menstrual cramps. It's been known to relieve PMS. So we have to look at the nutritional considerations too. So once we can have this conversation, we can now look at the nutrition that's provided within the schools. We can look at the nutrition that's provided in the shops that surround the schools that the children choose to have, or the nutrition that we send our children to school with. We can look at the conversations we have around menses, around maternity, around menopause, so that I loved what Chloe said, and it's true. We've got to stop being embarrassed in the menstruation, embarrassed in maternity, embarrassed in delivery, embarrassed postnatal, and embarrassed in menopause. We don't need to go for our life being embarrassed and embarrassed with weak pelvic floors. We just need to understand that the body is the most complex, complicated, but most wonderful thing that's on this earth. And the sooner we start to have a better understanding of how our body works, the better it will be for us, and the conversations and the environment and the atmosphere can change. Could you imagine, 10, even as soon as 10 years from now, that those comments, oh, she's just having a period, oh, she's having PMS, those comments literally become null and void and they're just not around. Could you imagine that? That your daughter or your granddaughter or your great-granddaughter doesn't have to go through that, because we've changed the whole environment and the whole outline of what female intimate health looks like. We have open conversations. Men understand their role within the conversation, because also there's male intimate health as well. That has to be a conversation. And once we start to get ourselves into a better position with better nutrition and lifestyle considerations, we will then be able to make decisions that we can be accountable for, and not look at someone else to be responsible for the decisions that we've made, or the outcome of the decisions that we've made. So if you really want to be a part of the 60-day challenge, how to remain confidently continent and sexually satisfied whilst improving posture, performance and body shape, and we will be talking menses, maternity, menopause. We will be talking confidence, continence. We will be talking, when I say sexual satisfaction, trust me, I'm not telling you how to do it, where to do, but we're talking from a biomechanical point of view about how the body works, so that we can live life better, so that when you're putting your pension away and you've worked for 40 years, you don't fall apart, so that by God's grace your relationships will stay together. But if they do, and they don't last, sadly, that when you're ready for a new relationship, the body knows how to respond accordingly. That is what we're looking at, helping you to help yourself. pelvicsecrets@icloud.com. PELVIC, Charlie, SECRETS, pelvicsecrets@icloud.com. You can call me 07956 450 327. You can find me on Instagram at Pelvic Secrets, Twitter at Pelvic Secrets. I don't really use it. And you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, Jenni Russell. But until next week, in pelvic floor health and happiness, stay blessed, stay well, and above all, stay joyful, stay safe.